the Toronto Star. I'm Saba Itazaz, and this matters. Hi, welcome to our special coverage of a star-studded award season where we look at a glamorous list of nominees and potential winners. Wait. If you know me well enough and have listened to our podcast, you know I'm talking about books. It's book award season in Canada, and I'm here for it. Canada's prestigious literary award for books, the Scotiabank Giller Prize, has recently announced its shortlist, which is not short on diverse Canadian literature. And we'll have a winner on Monday in an actual in-person award ceremony after nearly 2 years of this pandemic and lockdowns. It's been a challenging couple of years for book publishers and sellers, but things are looking better. And some awesome titles have been unleashed this fall, along with the Giller nominees, and we'll be talking about those in this episode. So I'm sitting down with the Toronto Star's book editor, Deborah Dundas, to talk about some of the much talked about books this season and the potential Giller Prize winners, because I'm getting tired of looking at the pile of unread books on my bedside table and, like a normal person, would like recommendations to add to it. Also, I'm sorry you might hear some audio distortion in today's episode, but we're still working digitally, and hey, that's the tech life for you. Hi again, Deborah.
Hi, how are you, Saba?
I'm doing good. I feel like this is becoming a yearly tradition for us to do this book talk episode on the pod, and I'm loving it.
I think it's fabulous. You know, we're doing it right around Giller time each time, so let's make it a tradition. I mean, the Gillers are a tradition anyway, right?
Totally, yeah.
Something everyone looks forward to, so might as well mark it in all ways we can.
I absolutely support that. So here we are again on the cusp of what's officially award season for Canadian books. And it seems like it's going to be pretty exciting because it's going to be an in-person event again after the digital isolation of announcing nominees and winners through the sad Zoom window, right? And a lot of people have been tweeting about it too.
Well, it's interesting. I actually did a story that's going in Saturday's paper about it. What I did was I asked all of the finalists, the 5 finalists, what their thoughts were about actually having to be among people again. You know, because writing's such an isolating thing. It's such a solitary thing. You add COVID on top of it. We've all gotten used to being on Zoom with each other, going to virtual book launches and virtual events. But we're all worried, I think, that we're going to lose our ability to make small talk, and we have to dress up.
Yeah, I don't know what that's like.
I mean, with our COVID pounds, right? I don't know if anything's going to fit me. But I mean, Jordan Dennehill, tweeted that he was going to have to get a dress. So that was kind of fun. And I think everybody's looking forward to it, but, is a little bit worried at the same time. Having said that, it's going to be a smaller affair than usual. I mean, before it was huge. Jack Rabinovich, the founder of the Giller Prize, it was founded to honor his wife, Doris Giller, who was a former Toronto Star books editor. And he founded it to honor her. And so there were all sorts of people, the great and the good would all be invited because they were his friends too. He was a businessman and philanthropist and had his fingers in an awful lot of pies and knew an awful lot of people. He was a lovely, lovely man. We all remember him very fondly, I think. But anyway, this year it's going to be a much smaller affair because of COVID. So it's going to be basically, writers and publishers and their agents and a few others of us who were lucky enough to be invited to actually be in the room as opposed to, watch from afar, which I think a lot of people are going to be doing with the live streams and things.
That's exciting. And like you said, everyone's going to have to relearn the art of small talk again. And also, Deborah, you talked about the announcement event as well. You were there. You were part of this very small group of double vaccinated book people. And it was at a hotel. Hotel events are back. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was at the top of the Park Hyatt. Now, they famously had their, rooftop bar, which was a notorious place for writers to meet and chew the fat and get a few drinks. And so what they've done is they've actually done the renovation and made it into, they've called it the writer's room, I think. But anyway, it's sort of dedicated to the idea of writers. And yes, when they made the shortlist announcement, I think there were 30 of us in the room and everybody was double vaxxed. And it was funny because we weren't quite sure what to do. Everyone's keeping a little bit of space. Someone got a tickle in their throat and everyone jumped back like 5 feet. It's tricky. It was nice to see people again, though. Again, because it's such a solitary thing.
It's isolated.
Publishing is all about relationships, I think. Authors like to talk to each other. They like to bounce around ideas, what they're doing. It's a very sort of specific kind of existence, right? When you're working on your own like that. So it's great to see people again. And I think people are going to be excited about it. And people are excited about it. And it'll be fun to see whether everybody is like us and their clothes actually fit. Actually, I did have a conversation with someone yesterday who said they were just going to wear a suit and not rent a tux. But then they went and put their suit on and the suit didn't fit.
Oh.
And so he had to go and rent a tux. So there you go. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I think a lot of us are very used to just wearing like the top part of like whatever formal attire. So
absolutely. Stretchy clothes.
exactly. And it's very interesting that you talk about the social aspect of it. That's probably really important for writers because writing itself is such a solitary, isolated act. And you want to come out of that, be able to interact with people. All right, let's talk about the prize itself. Let's quickly refresh some background for anyone who might not be familiar with the Giller Prize. What is it and what does it mean for Canadian literature?
The Giller Prize was set up by Jack Rabinovich to honor his wife, Doris Giller, who was actually a former Toronto Star books editor who passed away of cancer, and he wanted to honor her. And so he came up with this prize. The idea was to celebrate the best book in Canada that year, the best fiction book in Canada of that year. So that's what he did. He put up the money himself every year and he created this wonderful event that happens every year. And he paid for it out of, his own pocket for many years. They've got sponsor now with Scotiabank and so on. But it made Canadian writing, I think, glamorous. It added a really glamorous facet to it that wasn't there before. And that really sort of lifted it up in everybody's mind. There's also something called sort of the Giller effect, right, for the writers. If you win the prize, but even if you end up on the short list or even the long list, book sales go up. And that's what he wanted to do too. He wanted to sell books. He wanted to give people a reason to go out and buy books. He had a saying that he would say every year he was sort of famous for, was that for the price of a dinner in this town, you can buy all of the books. So eat at home and go buy the books. I don't have that quoted verbatim. He was much more eloquent than I was there, but that was the idea. And that's what he wanted to do. And it really made a difference, I think, on the Canadian landscape.
We'll be right back. And speaking of the Giller effect, let's now come to our little curtain raiser that we do before the winners get announced on Monday, I believe.
That's right, Monday night.
Yeah, so we're just on the eve of it. Who's in the star-studded shortlist for this season?
Well, this year it's Omar El-Akkad for What Strange Paradise, and that was published by McClelland and Stewart. It's a wonderfully sort of accessible and readable book. He sort of riffs off of the picture we have of a young boy, a migrant boy whose ship has wrecked, lying on the beach. And he creates a whole story out of that. I spoke to him last week and the week before about it. And he said it was inspired in ways by the Peter Pan story. That's how he sort of structured it and came to it. So it wasn't the boy who wouldn't grow up, but the boy who wasn't able to grow up because that ability was taken from him. So it's a beautiful and accessible and readable book. And sort of the simplicity belies sort of the underlying issues, which are complicated and people are complicated. So it's a wonderful approach to that. Then we have Angélique Lalonde for Glorious Frazzled Beings by the House of Anansi. Isn't that the most fabulous title? Glorious Frazzled Beings.
It is. It's very catchy.
So this is a collection of short stories. I think it's the only one on the list this year to make the short list for short stories. Now, she's a debut writer. She won the Journey Prize in 2019 for a short story titled Hookah, which is also contained in this book. So, fingers crossed for Angélique. I mean, they're wonderful stories and, go through the whole sort of spectrum of life experience. So I'll leave it at that. Then we have Chiluche Onyemelukwe Onu Obiya, The Son of the House by Dundas Press. Now, she's also a debut author. She's a powerhouse of a writer. She's a lawyer and an academic for her day job. She divides her time between Halifax and Lagos in Nigeria. This novel is about two Nigerian women who have been kidnapped. They share their stories. One is a rich, sort of modern, accomplished woman. The other is a poor woman who's been a housemaid since she was 10 years old. So, it's very timely and sort of explores life for Nigerian women. Then we have Jordan Tannehill with The Listeners, and that's from HarperCollins. Tannehill always writes interesting books. His debut novel, Liminal, drew on real life, his mother's diagnosis of cancer. This book, The Listeners, also draws on real life, or at least a real life phenomenon known as the hum. He goes back to the 1970s, so, places it in a very specific time. The hum is like a low frequency noise that can't be measured, and not everybody can hear it. So it allows him to explore some conspiracy theory, all sorts of different.
That's very X-Files.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, again, what's interesting about him is he's a playwright. He's worked in video. He had a place in Kensington Market at one point called Video Fag, which was a storefront art space. And now he's working in London. So he's really multifaceted and interdisciplinary. And then we've been going in alphabetical order. Then we have Miriam Tays for Fight Night from Knopf, Canada. She's gone back to her family roots in this book that she's explored in sort of A Complicated Kindness or in All My Puny Sorrows in terms of her fiction. So I spoke to her about this. Her mother is very much the inspiration for this book, and Miriam herself has grandchildren. And she said she wanted them to know the story of their family, all these people and what happened to them. There was a lot of tragedy in her family. I mean, her father committed suicide, as did her sister. And these are things she's dealt with in her other books. So she wanted to give her grandkids a sense of who the family was and who these people are. So it's wonderful and smart and has the same sort of narrative feel as does All My Puny Sorrows, which was such a popular book. So there are a few surprises, about people who were on the long list that didn't make the short list. There was A Dream of a Woman by Plett. Now she writes with such precise, beautiful prose. That was short stories. Would have been nice to see her on it, but, maybe another time. Another one is Katrina Vermette, who has just won this week the Atwood Gibson Prize. So we can go into that, so you were talking at the beginning.
Yeah, we will talk about those other books as well. Amongst the shortlisted ones, are you allowed to say if you have a favorite for the win?
Do you know what's funny is I don't have a favorite for the win, to tell you the truth.
They're all great.
Yeah, I mean, it really could go any which way. I think Miriam this is her third time on the short list. So, it might be nice to see her, but it would be nice to see debut authors as well. We've got two of them. Omar or Jordan would be great too. Whichever way it goes, I think everybody will be happy. It's really good. It's a really good list.
I always love your recommendations, and I must admit this year my reading kind of got away from me. It's been a busy year. So out of all these books, and you've mentioned some other names that are not on the list, which ones are you suggesting, should have made it all the way to the end? Or basically I'm seeking out recommendations about what I should have on my bedside table next for this season.
Well, a couple of books that weren't on the short list that were on the long list were A Dream of a Woman by Plett. Now, she writes with such precise, beautiful prose. It was a book of short stories. It would have been nice to see her on it. And she's a trans writer and really, just people living their lives who happen to be trans, which is wonderful because we all have touchstones of humanity and she really reaches those. And I think that's important. And then there's Katrina Vermette for The Strangers. Now, that's a book that just won the Atwood Gibson Writers' Trust Prize for fiction. So The Strangers is about a family with the surname Strangers. That's their surname. And they live in Winnipeg. And it's women, Indigenous women, and their lives. And it's heartbreaking and powerful and won the inaugural Atwood Gibson Prize. I should say, so it used to be, I think, the Rogers Writers' Trust Prize for Fiction. It was just renamed the Atwood Gibson Prize this year to honor Margaret Atwood and her husband, Graham Gibson, who passed last year, the year before. So yeah, it was good to see her win it. And then we've also got the Hilary Weston Prize for Nonfiction. So the Writers' Trust gives out all of its prizes at once. So it gives the nonfiction prize, it gives the fiction prize, it gives a bunch of other prizes as well. So I think it was like $330,000 worth of prizes were given out the other day by the Writers' Trust. So The nonfiction prize went to Thompson Highway for his memoir, Permanent Astonishment. Now, there was a bit of controversy when that prize was first announced, when the finalist list was first announced, because it was all memoirs.
Great, Deborah. I have my list ready. And also, I was reading one of your other pieces, and it seems as if someone would like to get me one of these books for Christmas. And yes, I'm quite shamelessly hinting. They probably need to get on it right now because books are apparently in high demand and there's a supply issue, right?
These supply chain issues that have been dogging every industry everywhere, books backed up at ports, on container ships and in warehouses, they're dogging everybody. I spoke to a number of people in the books industry, from, booksellers, big publishers, printers, and they're all saying, if you want to buy them, get them while you can, because there's so many backlogs on getting them printed and getting them ordered that they might, like everything else we're looking at this season, just run out.
But apparently people are into reading now and they're buying books and not just watching endless episodes of Succession, as I previously thought. So that's great.
You know what? It's fabulous. And it's fabulous to see books not making a comeback. I mean, they never went away, but, people buying more, and hard copy books. People are on screens all the time. They don't want to be on the screens anymore. They want to read a book. It's a different experience.
Well, thanks so much for your insight and your time, Deborah. And I guess we're going to be seeing you next at the Giller Prize Gala on Monday. Are you going to be there? What are you wearing?
I am. Well, I've got a black dress because it's slimming and it's a little bit stretchy. So hopefully it still fits. Fingers crossed. If not, I'll be running out to Winners over the weekend to try and find something.
I'm sure you'll look absolutely great. Thank you so much for your time, Deborah. Take care.
Thanks. You too, Sal. It's always a pleasure.
I was talking to the Toronto Star's books editor, Deborah Dundas. That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, Sabai Tazaz. The This Matters team is Adrian Chung, Brian Bradley, JP Fozo, Matt Hearn, Morgan Bucknick, Raju Mutter, and Sean Pattenton. Our music is by So-Called, Mike DeAngelis, and Sean Pattenton. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com/subscribing matters. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.